Before the video starts, just a quick reminder to go check out Chilling. If you can't get enough content from me here on this channel, myself and other narrators here on YouTube are going to be providing hours of unique and spine-tingling scary story narrations exclusively over on Chilling. There's new narrations from me added weekly, and there's new professional narrators constantly being added to the list. So far there's over 300 stories to binge, from monsters, paranormal, thrillers, and true scary stories. The Chilling app recently even added classic novels like Dracula and some really cool vintage horror radio. And this all can be enjoyed with our one-of-a-kind ambient menu, where you can mix in immersive and relaxing sound effects like rainstorms and crackling fireplaces and adjust their volumes independently. You also have the ability to minimize the app and darken the screen to be fully entrenched in the spookies. Click the link in the description or the pinned comment to try the free trial of the Chilling app, and after that it's only $2.99 a month, which makes it completely ad and interruption free. And don't forget, Chilling is giving away a PS5 bundle on Twitter. There's another link down below with simple instructions on how to enter. You have until August 20th to enter, and a winner will be declared on August 23rd. Thanks so much, friends, and enjoy the stories. I have been camping and solo backpacking and hunting my whole life in Oregon, and felt comfortable in the woods and have a deep respect for nature. A few years ago, my wife, daughter, and 2 German shepherds went camping north of Mount Jefferson, Oregon. I have included the coordinates of our campsite, which we found to be the perfect setup for us and our 2 dogs who need the privacy since they are intimidating to other dog owners and can be loud when spooked. It was not an established campsite, just a nice horseshoe off a USFS road that had flat ground, full trees, and a fire pit. The first night my daughter wanted to sleep by herself in a 2-man tent right next to ours. It was maybe 2 feet away from me and my wife's tent. We made the male German shepherd sleep, Guts is his name, with her in the tent. This whole first night neither my wife and I could sleep. We both heard footsteps and they were heavy, not like typical forest creatures scampering around the night. I was well armed because I was paranoid from reading recently before departing about a dad in California who was shot and killed in a tent next to his 2 infant daughters. Needless to say, both my wife and I had 2 pistols and my rifle with me. The dogs are great at detection, and that is why I felt my daughter could sleep alone because Guts is completely fearless, and nothing would lay a hand on her without a battle to the death. All in all, nothing but bad vibes and loud footsteps occurred that night, which I ultimately decided was deer or maybe some elk. Day 2, morning. We go for a walk down the road and maybe 300 feet away see the circle area in the photo. I see an abandoned road where a rusted gate post, the gate was missing, was covered in vegetation. Something of blue color caught my eye and Guts immediately takes off running down this abandoned road. My heart begins to race because I think it's another family camping like us and he is going to get himself shot or scare some innocent people to death, so I chase after him as fast as I can and the rest follows. He stops about 20 feet into the road and me yelling his name, but I have covered just enough distance to see that there is nobody there and something is off about the sight. I yell, "Hello? Is anyone there? Sorry about the dog." I got no response. My curiosity gets the best of me and I have to see what the site conditions were. As I get closer, I know something is wrong. It had all the necessities for a campsite, including a cooler, propane burner, tent, blankets, folding table, but every single item had been completely destroyed, smashed and torn from what appeared to be claw marks. We walked around in circles, puzzled why anyone would leave all their camping gear behind, including an expensive REI tent. I figured, well, someone left in a hurry and animals got to the rest is the only logical explanation. Still, the propane tank and cooler were flattened by something, and it certainly wasn't snowpack with the tree coverage in that spot. As the afternoon rolls in, me and my daughter are playing bocce ball at the campsite and my wife goes walking maybe 70 feet north to do her business. I do not have a direct line of sight of her, but all of a sudden I see Guts make a mad dash straight towards her. Normally he would always be with me unless he is called over, and she didn't call for him. His speed and focus caught my attention, and I knew something weird was happening. So I ran over there, and my wife starts jogging at me, and I immediately draw my pistol. Guts has completely continued running into the forest another 100 feet before I call him, and he stopped. My other dog, Leah, who never misses the opportunity to be the pack leader, is not taking point. I have had her for 7 years now, and this was the first time in her life she refused to leave my daughter's side. She was full, hair raised, and attached to us at the hip. Again, anytime we hike or play, Leah is up in front, bossing around everything in her path, and pauses to look to see where we are and continues. I asked my wife what happened, and she said, I was trying to pee, and all of a sudden I felt all my hairs raise, and I knew someone was watching me. And then I saw Guts running towards me, and I got up and moved towards you. We spent 10 minutes looking for signs of anything and saw no trails, broken branches, nothing to point to what and where something went. We decided to spend one more night since it's too late to pack up and drive, but we will all be in the big tent together this time. Before we go to bed, I put a rope with a makeshift coin alarm around the perimeter of our campsite. I used a mint can and some coins and keys from our truck and zip-tied it so anything hitting the rope gave a little jingle. Very unsophisticated, but it put my wife at ease. As I go to tie my last corner off at a tree near our tent, our third mystery item unveils itself. It looks like someone has done the exact same thing I have done with a rope, that it was so old and brown I didn't see it at first. It was broken and only a few pieces remained, but sure enough it was tied at roughly the same height, 8 to 10 inches off the ground, and even had a few rusted washers on it. I immediately felt someone has stayed here before and put the same makeshift warning system on the same tree I am, maybe 10 to 15 years ago based on the condition of the rope. Perhaps the paranoia has now reached a new height, but I had to make sure the girls felt that we were safe, and at the time the only thing I could think of was when the evening came around, I made them sit in the truck and I fired a clip of my .45 into the dirt as a signal to whatever was out there that we are armed. I reassured the girls that anybody listening to that now knows that we've got 2 dogs and are armed, and we are too risky of a target so we can sleep safely. That night we heard no footsteps, and the dogs never perked up and barked. We left early the next morning. Fast forward to today, and I watched the Amazon Missing 411 Hunted documentary, and I noticed the cluster of missing people smack dab close to where we camped that weekend, and a flood of dread rushes over me as I think of that mysterious abandoned campsite with the ripped tent and smashed cooler and cooktop. We have been camping since and have enjoyed the beauty of the Northwest, but there was something there at that place that possibly took or harmed someone else less than 300 feet away from where we camped, and we all thank our lucky stars that Guts was doing his thing so well that afternoon. This happened when my sister and I were around 6 and 8. We're now 43, my sister, and 45, me, and it is something that still haunts us occasionally. We had an amazing municipal swimming pool in our neighborhood. South African summers in Johannesburg are hot and long, and the swimming pool was the ultimate destination. Fred was that adult that was always at the pool. He would swim lengths, practice diving, and tickle our feet under the water. And just typing this makes me feel nauseous. To this day, I still have issues with my feet being wet. Specifically, I am unable to leave cream on my feet. The sliminess makes me feel claustrophobic. I only realized the connection last year. Whenever we would sit on the edge of the pool with our feet hanging in, he would swim past all of us and tickle all of our feet in a row. I can't remember all the details 100%, but someone playfully screamed, "Oh no, Fred!" And Fred did it again and sang, "Oh no, Fred, not again, Fred." We all laughed, as kids do. And then he tickled our feet and made us sing his new song, "Oh no, Fred, not again, Fred." And it became, as he put it, a game. He would grab us under the water and we would sing. He went from feet tickling to chasing us and grabbing our waists under the water. "Oh no, Fred, not again, Fred." And the song never goes away. One day at the pool, Fred tells us that he has this amazing farm just outside of town. He would like to take us to see his animals, his mealies, or his corn, and his own swimming pool. It sounded like heaven to all of us. He was talking to several children, boys and girls. He told us to be at the swimming pool on Saturday, but not to tell our parents, and we'll go in his car. As soon as we get home, we tell our dad everything. We're so excited. This farm sounds amazing. Our dad says absolutely not. Who is Fred anyways? We tell him that Fred is our friend at the pool and plays with our feet and chases us around the pool. My dad says that actually, maybe we can go, but he wants to meet Fred first. Yay, I thought. The next day we go to the pool and we tell Fred we can go with him, but our dad wants to meet him first. Fred is upset that we told our dad, but we tell him not to worry. Our dad is cool. So Fred walks home with us. We only lived about 5 blocks from the pool and comes to meet our dad. Fred's about 5'6" or 1.7 meters, and my dad is 6'7", just over 2 meters, the personification of a gentle giant. My dad is super polite to Fred. He asks him loads of questions about the farm. Where is it exactly? How many kids are going? Has he spoken to other parents? Fred was cool as a cucumber. He answered the questions smoothly and confidently. My dad ended by saying, "Fred, I look forward to seeing you on Saturday at your farm. I think we'll have a great time. I'll bring my girls, though, and we'll meet you there." The next part is a bit of a blur to me. I'm not sure how we ended up driving in a convoy with about 3 other dads and their kids from the pool. It was so exciting. My dad had the map book leading the convoy to the best farm in the world. We drove about an hour out of town and we arrived at the derelict farmhouse. No animals, no corn, no swimming pool, just this run-down, isolated, scary-looking farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. I remember being really confused. My dad must have read the map book wrong, I thought. All the dads huddle together. We have no idea what they are saying, but they seem angry. We are also angry. We are obviously lost, and it's our dad's fault. Everyone gets in their cars, and then I start screaming at my dad about how he deliberately got us lost because he doesn't like Fred, and he doesn't want us to have fun. My dad is silent and pensive. After my tantrum, he says to my sister and I in a very calm and deep voice, "Fred is a bad man. He was going to hurt all of you. He is the bad man your mom is always warning you about. My mother is obsessed with true crime. There's no farm. I'm so happy you girls told me what was going on because something bad could have happened to you." His strong voice broke in those last words. The gravity of his tone and break in his voice made my sister and I realize immediately that he was right, and we were in danger. We cried and apologized. He made us promise to tell him if we saw Fred again. Fred stayed away from the pool for about a month, and as soon as we saw him come through the gate, we quickly got dressed and ran home. When my dad came home from golf, we told him Fred was at the pool again. The next day, we went to the pool with our dad. We were swimming and my dad was sitting on one of the benches to the side. In walks Fred. He comes to the edge of the pool and is calling us. We refuse to go to the edge. He's getting frustrated. My dad gets up and comes up to Fred. "Hey buddy, can I chat with you outside quickly?" Fred physically shrunk. My dad had his hand on Fred's shoulder and was guiding him out of the pool. And I can only imagine what my dad did and said to Fred. My dad is a gentleman, but don't mess with his girls. Fred was never seen at our swimming pool again. So I'm 23, male, and live in California. Last year I decided to use Tinder for the first time. I had previously used Hot or Not and Plenty of Fish, but mostly just got bots and scammers, so I already wasn't very big on online dating. However, I was feeling bored on Friday afternoon, so I decided to install Tinder and just see what happened. After creating an account, I began swiping people, and it wasn't more than like half an hour after I had gotten off the app that I got matched up with someone. For a little context, I'm what you call somebody that goes both ways. And I matched with a 25-year-old dude named Aiden. Aiden was what I would call attractive, and he had similar interests in gaming and coding as I did. I decided to go and send him a message, but before I could even type a single letter, he sent me a message. The message read, "Hey, saw you're new to Tinder and thought I'd reach out and say hi." I said hi back, and the two of us began talking about our love for video games, movies, and coding. He told me he's a full-time coder and makes a salary only working 4 hours a day. He asked me if I'd be down to come chill with him. I then offered to have him over to my house because I was alone and he lived with his parents. He seemed very excited all of a sudden and said he'd love to come over. We agreed on him coming in an hour so I could tidy up my room and get my PC ready for gaming. After about an hour or so, I sent him my address and he said he was on his way. Now, normally I wouldn't have invited someone to my house that I'd never met, but this guy seemed harmless and he was attractive, so I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I heard a knock at my front door and I looked out the peephole and saw it was Aiden. He had a bottle of red wine in his hand and a smile across his face. We hadn't discussed drinking wine together, but I did in fact love red wine, and the brand he had with him just so happened to be my favorite brand. I opened the door and greeted him. I told him that wine was my favorite and asked him if he's a mind reader. He laughed and said, "I just strike him as a red wine kind of guy." I asked him how he planned to get home if he ended up drinking too much, and he said he Ubered to my house. We ended up having a couple of glasses of wine on my back patio, just talking about life, work, and shared our coming out stories. After the wine, we went back inside to play PC and had a blast. After the gaming, he showed me his laptop, which he had brought with him, and showed me his work. Eventually, I had to use the restroom, so I excused myself to pee. I then heard him approaching the bathroom door and even turning the knob. Because I didn't lock the door behind me, he just came right in completely unannounced and without any warning just starts grinding on me from behind while forcibly grasping my shoulders. I shoved him off of me and just kind of jokingly said, "That's a bit intrusive." And he just smiled at me and said, "I just wanted to see how you'd react." I left the bathroom and walked into the kitchen with him walking right behind me. I asked him if he wanted more wine or maybe some water, but before I could grab the water bottles from the fridge, this dude pushed himself up against me and groped my private parts while smiling at me super creepily. This time, I was completely taken aback. I shoved him off me forcefully and yelled at him. I told him that we just met, and that I didn't think it was the right time to just jump into something like that. He said I was just a waste of time, and said that I had no idea what I was doing and that I give gays a bad name, then said I was being homophobic. I told him that I was that way, that I wouldn't be hanging out with him and talking about the way we were. I told him I found him attractive, but that he was crossing major boundaries. He just laughed and said, "In the LGBTQ community, there are no boundaries." And then just like that, he said he had to go. Thank God, is what I thought to myself. I walked him to the front door and he walked out without saying goodbye or anything. I didn't think anything else of it and decided I needed to take a shower. I got in the shower and about 5 minutes into my showering, I kept hearing this tink-tink sound coming from the other end of the door. I peek out through the sliding door of the shower and look down toward the bottom of the door. To my shock, I see Aiden holding a freaking spoon to the bottom of the door, looking in at me while I was showering. I could only see this because of how high off the floor the door sat. Not knowing what to do, I just pretended not to notice him and slowly turned the shower off. I got out, wrapped a towel around my waist, and prepared to confront him by yanking open the door. Before I could do that, I heard him snap a picture with his phone. I flung the bathroom door open, and he flew down the hall and out my front door. I saw him get into a white Honda Civic and drive away. He had lied about taking an Uber for some reason. I have no idea what in God's name he took a picture of or why he took it in the first place, but I can imagine that it wasn't for anything good. I immediately blocked him on Tinder and was paranoid that he'd return. So that's the story of my first Tinder date that turned out to be a complete nightmare. I have read some interesting stories of people who were almost kidnapped, and I've decided to share something that happened to my father when he was 9 years old, back in 1971. Although he doesn't live there anymore, and I have never visited this country, my father was born in Iran. He lived in Tehran, in a good zone of the city. One day, he was sent to run some errands, nothing big. He only needed to leave the apartment building where he lived and walk around 200 meters to get to the shop. He finished buying whatever he was told to buy and was in front of the portal of this building when suddenly a man who was next to the portal, and that had been staring at him when he came back, saluted my father and then asked if he could do him a favor. It was something like, "I have a friend who lives near here, but I'm too shy to go alone. Could you go with me and maybe ring the bell?" Of course, the excuse was pathetic, but my father, being 9 years old, at that moment didn't see anything wrong with it. He went with him to the apartment building where supposedly his friend lived. It was next to his own after all. They went inside, up to the second or third floor. Before continuing, you have to know that there were windows in every floor of the building so you could look outside. They arrived in front of a door and my father was getting nervous because the man had never stopped staring at him since they had met. He was ready to ring the bell, but suddenly the man stopped him and told that he had made a mistake and that wasn't his friend's house. He pointed through one of the windows that I mentioned before to another apartment building, which was much further away. And at that moment my father became really anxious. There was something telling him that he was in danger. He apologized, said that his parents hadn't given him permission to go there and that they were waiting on him. Before he could go back, the man grabbed both of his arms, saying that he wanted to give him a kiss. Now, this part, it's a bit of a blurred memory. My father doesn't remember if the man managed to kiss him or if he was able to get free of his grasp. The only thing he remembers is running all the way down the stairs back to the street and back to his own portal, going inside his house and asking his parents for help. When my grandfather left the house to look for that man, he couldn't find him. He had already left. Now, this had a huge impact on my father. He left his country 40 years ago when things got nasty in Iran, but he didn't leave behind this memory. I remember back when I was a kid, I could hardly go anywhere or do anything without being accompanied by any of my parents in every moment. Even when he drove me to school, leaving me and my brothers just in front of the gate, he wouldn't leave until we had passed the gate and going inside the building. And from the gate to the main building there were only 20 meters, and it was a school territory. Being older and after reading so many cases of kids being kidnapped, I really can't blame him, especially because now that I'm older, I tend to do the same things for my children. This happened about 8 years ago in my local supermarket. I'm a female, 36 at the time, and I'm in the queue to pay. It is a Saturday morning, super busy, and I'm second in line. In front of me at the till is a family of 3, mom, dad, and daughter. Mom and dad are unpacking the trolley, and daughter is sitting in the trolley seat facing me. Behind me are 2 men, and they are making me super uncomfortable, standing way too close to me. You know when you feel someone before you see them? It was kind of like that. I was facing the daughter and she looked super uncomfortable, making herself smaller and kept looking over her shoulder to the dad. I turn around and these men are waving and smiling, trying to get her attention. Then the one guy reaches around me and touches her foot. He did it in such a familiar way that I thought he must know the family. She flinched away. He does it again. She quietly says, "Daddy." Dad swings around and says in a booming voice something along the lines of, "What are you doing, dude? Don't touch my daughter." This weirdo is like, "But we want to be friends." Dad is like, I don't know, you back off." I realize they don't know each other at all and instantly go into mommy mode. Dad goes back to unpacking the trolley, and I position myself between the two guys and the daughter, completely blocking access. Believe it or not, he tries to get her attention again. So I say really loudly, "You're so lucky that you have such a brave and strong daddy. Look how he's protecting you from these bad men." The dad looks at me and we have a silent conversation with our eyes. They pack up and leave quickly. I thought it was over. The girl is safe. As I'm unpacking my trolley, I suddenly notice that one of the men has moved around and is standing at the end of the till, where you pack your groceries into bags, staring at me with this face of pure malice. The other guy was still standing behind me in the queue, my trolley between us. I won't lie. In the moment, I felt intimidated, even terrified. I'm not a small woman. I am tall-ish, with very broad shoulders and quite strong. Side note, someone told me the other day that I am definitely not fart dust, translated from Afrikaans, but super funny, i.e. I am not small. Anyway, in my trolley is 15 kilograms of dog food. My adrenaline is pumping. I need to show this guy that I'm not an easy target. I make eye contact with the aggressor at the end of the till, and I lift this bag of dog food up like it's a roll of toilet paper. My facial expression doesn't change. No strain, no tension, just deep and dark. He keeps eye contact with me, and now I'm angry. The fear was gone. I pay and he blocks my exit from the till. I bump him light with my trolley. He even laughs menacingly and moves out of the way. I decided not to go straight to my car. I walk around the mall a bit, and every time I turn around, they're there, now with a third guy. They're not even hiding the fact that they're following me. The one guy makes a motion of cutting my neck. Screw this. I start making my way to the security desk. When I get there and turn around, they're gone, and I tell security everything. They recommend I let the supermarket know as well. Give them my till number so they can review the security tape above the till. A guard escorted me to my car. I drove home the long way, checking my rearview mirror constantly. I never saw them again, but to be honest, I stopped going to that supermarket. Partly because of that, but mainly their prices are not competitive, and my dogs became fussy eaters. Yesterday, while I, a 23-year-old female, was on my way to work, a random dude approached me and asked for my mobile number. I told him no. He tried to argue with me, and we just went in that circle a couple of times. When we got to the train station, he finally seemed to get my very subtle hints at me not wanting to talk to him, so he left. I thought it was it, and went on my more or less merry way. And then today, he turned up again. Different time, same train station. He stopped me while I was on my way back from work, initially blocking my path with his bike, asking for my number again. I told him no, went around him, and he followed. Great. Anytime I told him I had no interest in getting to know him, he went on about how he sensed love coming from me, and he just knew that I would feel the same if I only gave him a chance. For some inexplicable reason, that still didn't convince me. When we got to the corner of the street I lived at, I stopped. I definitely wasn't going to let this stranger walk me to my home. He noticed and told me, "Oh, don't worry. You can go home. I'll come with you." As if we weren't still in pandemic times, and as if it was totally normal for someone to invite themselves into other people's homes, not even knowing each other's names or anything. I again told him that was not going to happen, getting louder and angry at this point. He said okay and turned around to leave, or so I thought. When I started walking home again, he suddenly rode his bike up next to me, once more giving me his sensing love shtick. So, standing there, we went back and forth several times, including his urging for me to just go home. Only after had I threatened him with the police did he leave. Whether it is for good or for today, we'll see. Either way, I asked my flatmate to come and walk back home with me. We took a detour just to be safe, and now I need this whole disgusting thing out of my mind. This was 1992. My mother was going through a bad patch in her marriage and chemotherapy for breast cancer. We lived in a very quiet town where residential areas only had small markets. For everything else, including pharmacy and public calls, we had to go to the main market, which was almost 3.5 miles from our house, 1.5 miles from our apartment block to the main road, and then 2 miles to the market, either by walk or by public transport. My mother, who was going through some tough time given my father's complete disconnect with us, she used to call her brother, my uncle, for advice and catharsis, and he lived in another city. For those calls, she had to go to the public call office, or the PCO, which was run by 2 weird men. The same market had the pharmacy where my mother would buy her medicine. I was 11 and my older sister was 17. One evening, my mother, along with my sister, went to the PCO to talk to my uncle. I don't remember why, but I think my father asked her to leave the house and she wanted to discuss her options. She was in distress and didn't realize it was already late when she finished the call. The market was closed, and so was the public transport. My mom and sister paid the bill and started their walk home on the path next to the main road. The 2 PCO owners closed the PCO and started following them, one on foot right behind them trying to offer a ride, and the other on a bicycle next to them on the deserted main road. My mother strictly refused, held my sister's hand tightly, and started walking as fast as she could when a white van appeared on the service road and started driving slowly next to them. The PCO guys had already arranged a ride with some really bad intentions and didn't seem to go away. They were probably waiting for them to get off the main road to strike. On the next turn, 2 men came from the opposite side on the footpath, and to my mother's relief, it was the pharmacist and his friend who were returning to pick up his car from his shop's parking lot after a walk. They saw the men in the van and immediately realized what was going on. They stopped, said hello, and asked if she needed help. They agreed to walk them home. The PCO men fled upon seeing the guys. The kind pharmacist saw my mother and sister to the safety of our house, and my mother never went to that PCO again.
Alright, so check this out. A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance of having space and having nice neighbors close enough not to feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, especially if there were clouds blocking the moonlight. It didn't bother me, though. It made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in the middle of winter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I saw only what my headlights and my front porch lights were illuminating. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd, because I'd never smelled that before around that house. I didn't see anyone nearby, so I ignored it and went inside. I had just gotten off of a shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired. Even though it wasn't even 7 o'clock yet, I decided to take a shower and call it a night. I woke up sometime later, sure that I had heard a noise inside my house. I wasn't worried right away because my friend would sometimes stop by to use my shower after work on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't home. He would always text me to let me know beforehand, though, and I hadn't heard my phone go off. I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone screen and number pad blinded me. These were the days before phones had a light sensor that would dim the screen in the dark, and this particular phone was so bright I could use it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes, I could make out that it was 9-something, but I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. Joel? There were a couple of seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as someone started running throughout the bottom floor of my house. I leapt out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I'd opened the door and stepped inside. The house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms on either side of the hallway, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open. I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway past my door and into the bathroom. Thank God he did. That gave me enough time to open the attic access in the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I had just started to lift myself up when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside of the attic when the bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my room and stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back to the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in a corner, some weights, and a table where I painted my miniature models. I guess they decided that if someone were hiding, it would be in the bedroom because they charged back into my room and turned on the light. A moment later, the closet door was ripped open. I was crouched in my attic just a foot or so away from the access, so I could try to stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could see was from about their knee down. They were wearing dirty blue jeans with frayed cuffs and worn-out work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. The scream was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepdad, who would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually be put in a hospital for several mental disorders that resulted in erratic and violent tendencies. The man in my house ran back down the stairs. I heard crashes and clatters as things were thrown around and furniture was knocked over. I stayed crouched in the attic. I'd left my cell phone in bed when I ran for the closet, and I wasn't certain I could climb down without him hearing me. After some time, the noises stopped. I started counting slowly, and when I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe enough to climb down and then call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was the intruder had flipped my bed over. I assume in an attempt to find me. That was the loud noise I had heard after he stepped away from the closet. I couldn't find my cell phone, so I went to the landline by the bed and called the police from there. I waited in my room until I heard them call out from downstairs. The first floor was a mess, but I had expected that. Chairs had been knocked over, the sofa had been flipped. All the books, pictures, and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in the kitchen had been opened and all the boxed and canned foods had been thrown on the ground. As far as I could tell, though, the only thing missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along my fence line and some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said people often use to smoke meth. So they think he had been watching my house for a while. I realized that he must have been out there smoking a cigarette when I had got home earlier that night. They collected up the evidence and told me I should stay with family or friends that night and get that door fixed as soon as possible. I opted just to not sleep. I moved a shelf over to block the broken door and spent the next couple hours just cleaning things up. I would often go to the window with a flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police found the cigarette butts and the foil, but I didn't see anything. The next day, I called to have the door fixed and motion lights installed at the back and the sides of my house. I ran a phone cable up into the attic and added a landline. I never wanted to be stuck up there without a phone again. Nothing else happened at that house, though. I lived there another 3 years without incident. One more precaution I took was practicing getting out of my bed, going to my closet, and climbing into the attic as quickly and quietly as possible. I even kept at it when I moved, except now I go to a crawl space at the back of the closet instead of the attic. I try not to think about what would have happened if I had been a bit slower getting to the attic, or if he hadn't gone into the bathroom at the end of the hall first.
Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. I release new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. If you get a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit r/LetsReadOfficial, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon, and maybe even pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all these stories in long compilation form and save huge on data, located anywhere you listen to podcasts. All links down below. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon.